Starting in 10 seconds. Yes, you're ready to start.
Okay, thank you for attending the Small Heath Ward Forum meeting today. I'd just like to let all of you know that the meeting will be recorded and that a copy of the recording of the meeting will be available for further recording via the council's YouTube channel. Residents wanting to speak, please raise their virtual electronic hand and wait to be invited to speak as there would be as face-to-face meetings. The Ward Forum meeting is for residents registered to vote in Small Heath Ward. Attendees not registered to vote in the ward may stay and listen to the meeting, but may not participate in the discussion unless invited to do so by councillors. Further Ward Forum meetings, all new spend has to be approved by S151 Control Spend Board, including the cost of the hire of the venue and Ward Forums meetings across the city. Is there any venue in the ward that can be used for free? Face-to-face ward meetings can still continue. We also have the option to hold the meeting online as there is now a new cost involved. The Khidmat Centre has kindly offered to host the Ward Forum meetings with no cost. This will be an option that we can use for future meetings. So yeah, we've got the selective licensing scheme for private rented sector officers from the private rented sector team to update us on the scheme, which covers 25 wards, including Small Heath Ward. So I'm gonna get one of you guys to give your presentation. Is it Lakshmi that's going to be speaking?
Hi, it will be my colleague Emily speaking today. My name's Lakshmi. I'm one of the service managers for the new property licensing scheme, but Emily has prepared a presentation that she'll present for us now. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily, do you want to come in? Sorry, let me just unmute you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Hi, as Lakshmi's just said, my name's Emily Blackhurst. I'm one of the team leaders for the new selective licensing scheme. So we're here today to inform you about that and give you some information. So we have got a excuse me, short presentation to show you. So there's a number of slides which I'll talk you through and give you some further information as we go through. As the councillor said, there will be an opportunity at the end for questions, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. So let me share my screen. Just bear with me. So let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah, okay, so that's good. Okay, let's work our way through these then. Okay, so property licensing then as a whole. So the city has had a mandatory HMO licensing scheme in place for a number of years. So that is, sorry, I've gone too fast there. So that is your HMOs that are 5 or more persons sharing. We are actually a separate department to that, in that we are delivering a selective licence and an additional HMO licence. So all residential properties within a designated ward of the city are going to be subject to selective licensing, and additional HMO licensing, as is mandatory, is citywide. So we'll come on to the details of that in just a moment. So the piece of legislation that we work with whilst administering the licences is the Housing Act 2004, and that essentially places a statutory duty on all local authorities to licence HMOs that are of a particular size, which is 5+. So as I say, that's been in place in Birmingham for some time now, but the legislation also allows local authorities a discretionary option to licence smaller HMOs, which would be those of 3 or 4 persons sharing, and also other privately rented properties within a certain number of areas or wards within a city. So probably should have started with this, but the definition of a HMO is a house in multiple occupancy. So that is classed as such, if you have at least 3 tenants forming more than one household sharing one or more amenity, and by amenity I mean a kitchen or a bathroom. So the why really is there because it allows local authorities to raise the standards of the accommodation within the private rented sector. And the law applies to England and Wales. In order to discharge this duty, Birmingham as a city had to make an application to DLUC, the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and the Secretary of State to gain permission to run this scheme. And the reasons for that are on a later slide. But to give you some figures, it's estimated that there is, as you can see there, around 468,000 properties in Birmingham, of which roughly 105,000 are part of the PRS, the private rented sector. So the selective licensing scheme then, as I've just touched on there, we needed to obtain approval for this from the Secretary of State for housing. There was quite a comprehensive consultation in place, which started in January 2021. So local residents were consulted with around that, businesses and other stakeholders. Based on the evidence submitted, the scheme was given the go-ahead for 25 wards of the city. And the reasoning that for these 25 wards was really around deprivation, overcrowding, high levels of crime and antisocial behaviour, wards that simply have, you know, a high number of private rented properties within them. So we estimate that for selective licensing, which makes up the bigger number of what we're doing on the scheme, will account for around 54,000 properties. And the scheme went live on the 5th of June this year, and it's been signed off for 5 years. So here's an overview of the wards, the 25 wards. As you can see there, Small Heath is one of those 25 wards. And for Small Heath, I think the estimation for that ward and for the number of properties that we're kind of estimating is around 1,800. And that would be 1,800 would be a combined number of HMOs and single family properties. So additional licensing, again, much the same. There was a period of consultation starting in January 2021. Again, the approval was obtained. And obviously, as already mentioned, this is for HMOs made up of 3 to 4 occupants. Excuse me. And we predict there to be around 8,000 of these smaller HMOs across the city. I think the important thing to note here is that additional licensing is actually across the entire city. It's citywide. So whereas selective licensing covers only those 25 wards we saw there, additional licensing is actually citywide. So the licensing fees, so this is per unit, so this is per property per unit. So you can see there the fees are taken in 2 parts. So let's look at a selective licence over here. Part A is taken at 375, which is on submission of somebody's application. They make that payment, and we then take the remainder of that fee when we actually issue their draft licence. So that's £700 for a selective, slightly more for an additional at 755. And again, these fees are the fees that are generated through the scheme can only be put back into the scheme and into the areas that the scheme is administered for. So we are looking at different ways that we can use that money to improve communities and neighbourhoods. So there are some blanket exemptions for property licensing, and these are a few of those. So to just give you a brief overview, any property that is under a registered social landlord, so by that you may or may not be familiar with supported exempt accommodation, which are generally HMOs that house vulnerable adults, and there is a support element attached to that accommodation. So those kinds of HMOs at the moment are not captured within licensing. Any building that's controlled or managed by NHS or other statutory services, they're not going to be covered. They fall outside of scope for licensing. Student accommodation is exempt from licensing where it is managed by the educational establishment. If it's managed and the tenancy is issued by a private company, then that would be licensable. Buildings occupied by the owner. So if you live in your property and have a lodger, that would not be covered under licensing. It's up to two lodgers that you could have living with you as an owner occupier before it would fall within scope of licensing. Buildings occupied by religious communities, as you can see there. We've covered the students. So that's kind of your blanket exemptions. In terms of temporary exemptions, we can look at those as well on a case-by-case basis. It's within the legislation that local authorities can use a discretionary temporary exemption, which lasts for 3 months and can be renewed only once. And the law is quite clear about that we can only issue it once and renew it once. So examples of where we might look at a temporary exemption would be if the property is being sold, if a valid eviction notice has been served to a tenant with no further intention to rent the property. We have seen some where the property is going through probate, where unfortunately, the property owner has passed away. And some examples may be where the property's been repossessed and is going through that process to also be sold. So as I say, landlords can apply for these, and we will look at these on a case-by-case basis. So that was kind of the application side, but although the scheme came in on the 5th of June this year, actually from the 4th of September we've been undertaking making inroads into getting our compliance and investigation side off the ground, because that kind of is the other half of the scheme, if you like. Applications is what we're doing initially, but then obviously once we're getting people through and licensed, we then need to be making visits to the properties, checking that obviously the license conditions are being adhered to. There's a set of 16 license conditions for selective and 17, I believe, for additional licensing that the landlord needs to adhere to. So we would check against that to ensure that they're compliant with that. There's also some work, or a lot of work, that will go on around finding landlords that are not coming forward for licensing. We anticipate that there will be quite a few of those, and we will be analysing a range of data and other things, working with other agencies, other departments within the council to try and identify those properties and those landlords, and ultimately where they can be identified, there will be a period where we will ask them to come forward, but where there is non-compliance we will look at civil penalties, banning orders, and ultimately prosecutions to get those within compliance. Okay, so that's the end really. This is our contact information, so you can see there's a link to how to make an application, both for selective, additional, and therefore mandatory. We've also gone live within the last couple of weeks with the public register for selective and additional licensing. We're required by law to provide that within the public domain. So there's a link there that you could use to search by address or by postcode to see if you suspect that a property is rented within your road or within your area. You can use that actually to see if there is a licence in place. Probably worth mentioning that will only show up at the point we've actually issued the final licence. The process is as such that we would issue, once we've reviewed the application and we're happy with it, we issue a draft that then sits in draft for 20 days. And then if no representations are made during that period, we then issue a final licence, and it's only at that point that that the property would actually show on that public register. And these are our email addresses that you can come through to us at. So it's pl@birmingham.gov.uk. That will come through to the team, myself and Laxmi. So if you've got any queries, concerns, anything like that, please do email us on that email address. And then slightly different one for mandatory HMO licensing, and that is prs@birmingham.gov.uk. I think that's the end of it. Thank you very much. As I said at the beginning, happy to take questions.
Thank you, Emily. Before I go to the residents, Shbina, do you want to ask Emily a question or anything?
Yes, thank you, Saqib. So just a question, and I'm sure many of the viewers here will have the same question as well. Is there a difference then between the licensing, the property license we're talking about, and exempt housing?
Yes, yeah, there is. So exempt accommodation is unlicensed and unregulated accommodation. So it's HMOs in the way that you would think of a HMO, but unfortunately at the moment it is unregulated and uncommissioned, unlicensed. There is a bill that has not long passed through Parliament that is going to allow local authorities or put a statutory duty on authorities to license those properties. It's been needed for a long time. Obviously, I don't think it's clear at the moment how long that process is going to take until that comes under licensing, but it is a positive step in the right direction. So yeah, that is the main difference really, in that local authority can't legally at the moment license supported accommodation.
Thank you. And just one more question, please. Do we have any figures on how many HMOs we have in Small Heath and how many exempt accommodations that we have in Small Heath?
I can come in here, Councillor, if you'd like me to. So if I just give you the overview of the figures first, just to put it into perspective, I suppose. So as Emily said, citywide, we believe there are about 54,000 selective licenses. We've received 1,800 applications. We've issued nearly 2,500 licenses, with just over 800 sitting in draft. Additional, we believe there are 8,000 additional HMOs. We've received nearly 1,500 applications, issued 150 with 180 in draft. In Small Heath, as Emily said, we believe there are 1,800 licensable rented properties, and we have received 273 applications so far. I don't have the breakdown for you on additional and selective, but I can get that to you, as I don't have the further stats of what's been issued and what's in draft. But it's a really good start for Small Heath. So we've obviously had nearly 300 landlords come forward already, submit their application, which is fantastic. We are still in a bedding in period. Totally appreciate landlords may not be aware at this stage. So we are in November, leafleting the whole city, every domestic property, every commercial property, with that will go out to every property, just to say, you know, double check whether or not you require a license, and obviously get in touch if you've got any concerns, any questions, or if you're just not sure. Would be my advice to the landlords. But hopefully those figures, yeah, we're not there yet with Small Heath, but we are getting, you know, we are still at the beginning.
Thank you. And before I open up, just one more question, because I've noted all the figures down. When will the enforcements take place? So, because if you look at the 1,800 and you've only had 273 applications coming for, when do enforcement start? So if landlords don't register, is there penalties, and how would it
ultimately work? Yes. So we don't, enforcement is a staged process. Enforcement is a staged process, so we have to adhere obviously to Birmingham City Council's graduated approach to enforcement. So enforcement can be informal and formal. So we're already sort of in the informal compliance stages with where residents have come forward and said to us, I think next door needs a license. We've already written to the landlord and said, just to let you know, you need to get a license. Obviously, we'll give landlords time to do that. Obviously, the leafleting of the city is the start of the enforcement, but in the new year we will be looking down, writing to landlords specifically where we've had sort of complaints or data, writing to landlords say you need to license your property, and then it will go from there, case by case, on how landlords interact with us. So far it is definitely positive, and it is an educational piece, but in the new year we will move towards, rather than advice, more to sort of instruction to get licensed, because we'll then be at sort of a 6-month mark.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Sajid Hussain has got his hand up, so I'm going to go to Sajid. Question.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. When obviously you set this up, you had a steering group with Carol, who was the head of the steering group, working with Cllr. That group was set up for 1 year, and at the end of that group, there was a list of terms and conditions that were given that they did not meet to what they were expecting. While this was going on, that steering group was finished off. The other question is, I'm a member of the Association of Landlord Letting and the NRLA. Now, the local community, the Asian and the Black community, are mostly affected in these 25 areas. None of the Asian and the Black community were consulted at any point to deal with this. The other concern I've got is that this is about the selective licensing, sorry, I'm talking about, not the HMOs or any other license, just the selective licensing. Now, this £700 charges obviously is going to go into each individual landlord. Now, the landlord is going to forward this onto the tenant. That's how it's going to work. I mean, I dealt with this at one point where they took away the plan of the house. So the surveyor wasn't charging £150 to £200 at that point. But Cllr has had over 30 emails sent to her, but she has not replied to any of the emails concerning that. This is obviously a great concern for the Asian and the Black community. These 25 areas that was picked on are purely Asian and Black people that are being targeted here. Can you tell me, were any Asian and Black groups involved in this consultation in January? That's one of my questions, and I'll come back to the others.
Thank you, Sajid.
Thank you.
Sorry, yeah.
Should we
Oh,
take
I'll
some more, do you want to
in
answer? Should we take
terms of
some more
the-
questions and then do you want to, should we take some more questions or do you want to answer?
I'm happy to answer that. Just in terms of them, exactly who was consulted, I couldn't give a list of everyone who was consulted, but I can absolutely put that as an action. And if I'm provided with an email address, or I can respond directly to councillors on who was consulted. I understand the concern about the black sort of ethnic minority communities, I suppose. But the data that was looked at, as Emily said, was not to do with sort of ethnicity or background. It was those sort of three aspects of percentage of rented properties and then levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. In terms of the steering group and the responses that you haven't got, I will of course follow that up. And sorry, I think I may have missed the last one.
That was the involvement of any Asian and Black communities in the consultation.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. What I can do is I'll have a look at the consultation paper and I'll provide that sort of offline if that's okay.
Okay. The other thing, obviously,
Sajid, 1 minute. Sajid, one second. Can we just go to some, because I've just noted there's a few other guys. So can I just take questions from a few of the other guys and then we'll bring you back in, if that's okay?
Right, so everybody's gone quiet. So shall I speak up here? I've got my hand raised. Just following on from Councillor Bano's question about enforcement, do you have a date planned for enforcements to start? A rough date?
We're looking to sort of ramp things up in the new year. So we're currently recruiting for all our compliance officers, so they'll be trained up, and then we'll be looking sort of at starting enforcement in the new year. Don't forget, it's not blanket enforcement. It is property by property. So where landlords are working with us, it may require no enforcement at all because they've applied for their license. We've done a visit, everything's fine, and you sort of ticked off. So we wouldn't want people to sort of get worried about the term enforcement. In the beginning, we kind of already started with just letting landlords know you need to get your property license. Landlords will be given fair opportunity to do that, and any concerns, our team of licensed officers are great. They will talk you through the process, not you, but the landlords through the process. So keeping that communication open will, it doesn't mean just because on the, I don't know, the 1st of January you don't have a license you're going to get a fine. It doesn't work like that.
Right. Okay. Second part to this question then. What is the agenda for 5 years for the selective licenses? I know other cities around UK have had these running for 10 years, 15 years, and the agenda changes every 5 years at what the what the priority is to sort out in the 5 years. So area by area, it's designed as I've seen it firsthand. Each area and each town has its own agenda. What will be the agenda for these selective licenses?
So overall, our target, if you like, is to have 95% of all properties licensed, and then 75% of those having been inspected. Now, don't ask me what the exact numbers are, but we want our compliance officers to go out and check that number of properties, if you like, and the reason for the checks, obviously, to make sure the house is safe, the conditions the tenants are living in are healthy, so it's to protect the tenants. We then
are you saying it's the quality of the properties then? Is that one of the genders then?
Safety,
not
okay. Quality. So quality means different things to different people. It's safety. So we use something, the licensing the conditions in the license, but also where officers go in and there are things wrong. So perhaps the door doesn't lock properly or insufficient heating, where there are risks to health of the tenant. It's called the health and safety rating, the housing health and safety rating scheme. They will be assessed on that. And if there are hazards in the property, if it's unsafe for tenants, either action will be taken to bring the properties up to standard with the landlord.
You mentioned antisocial and crime as well. What are they part of the agendas?
Yes. So the antisocial behaviour absolutely is. So one of the licensing conditions is around the landlord having to do everything reasonably practicable to essentially to stop their tenant being antisocial or causing antisocial behaviour that obviously upsets other people. Now, we are in the process of developing a landlord guide, and we will be here. We're in the process as our processes as well, so that we can work with the landlord to provide that support to ensure that tenants are behaving properly and are not causing problems in the community. So the antisocial behaviour is sort of a big one on our agenda.
Good. I'm just going to squeeze something in here because I've experienced this in the last 10-15 years anyway. So if I just give you a scenario, there's an issue with a property. There's a rubbish piling up the back of the garden or the front of the garden. A resident can get in touch with yourselves, and then you can make an enforcement on the property directly with the landlord. And if he doesn't comply, you can get the works done and bill the landlord. Am I assuming something like that, or?
Correct. So yeah, there are a number of different pieces of legislation that we can use. Now there is in the licensing condition, there is one specifically about waste, providing bins, because we know in certain areas of the cities, rubbish is, that there are problems with rubbish, but absolutely what you've said is we can instruct the landlord to get the rubbish removed legally, obviously, and taken to a household recycling centre and provide evidence of that. And where landlords don't do that, we can fine them essentially for not doing it, but it's called doing works in default. So there is a separate piece of legislation, which is the Prevention of Damage by Pests Act, in addition that where we can have the works done and a charge is put on the property. But we don't really, I believe that we're hoping to build really good relationships with landlords, and we can help landlords perhaps with tenants that aren't
sorry, Zulfikar, can you please mute? Thank you.
So we don't, that's not the ultimate goal here. The goal is to get rubbish removed, of course, but it's not to take prosecutions and to fine landlords at all. It's to make the whole of the area better for everybody, whether that's inside the home or the community that they live in. Because we all know that you've got one garden with rubbish in, it sort of attracts more rubbish.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens after the first 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just go back to Sajid? I'll let you come in.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm just.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. How many applicants have you got at the moment that have applied for the selective licensing, did you say?
Over 18,000 citywide for selective. Small Heath.
And how long will it take you to process them?
So we are currently working through all of those applications in the date order that they were received. So we've to date, I think, issued around 2,500 licenses in total. So we are at the moment working at around a 2-month backlog, I would say. So we would hope that probably by the end of the year we will have caught up on all of those. But obviously we're assessing them in date order that they were received to obviously make it a fair process.
You've received 18,000 applicants for the selective license. You've dealt with about 2,500. That's in the 3 months from when you've actually started this.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's taking you 2,500 to do what in 3 months. So if you do the 18,000 divided by 2,500, that should take you about 7 months.
Where in the
Yeah.
other issue we're having is there's because of the city council's situation, there was a pause on recruitment. So yes, yeah, in theory your numbers are correct.
And then
However,
on top of that, you
because
said
of the
you've got
recruitment,
54,000 possible properties. So if you take that, that's going to take you over 18, 19 months, probably longer, to process all the applicants to get them up to date.
no, because we've in the beginning we only had a team of 2. Now we've got a team of is it about 16, and we'll be growing that team. So we've got officers coming in this week, next week. So that will speed up, and also the processes of learning the computer system and how to process them. Obviously, the beginning is slower, but as we get more officers, and now the officers are trained up, that will speed up.
Yeah.
How many officers will you have in the actual whole of this selective licensing team?
We anticipate from the head of service down to the sort of licensing officers, 100, and there's space for 120, and that's across licensing, applications, compliance and enforcement.
That's 120 officers.
Yes.
So that'll be what, £24 million a year? And
I couldn't tell you exactly what the officer costs are.
The landlords are paying £700 for this service. So if you times that by 2.4 million, times that by 7 years, there's not enough adequate money to run these services. So how will you be getting further funding?
We won't be. The license fee has been calculated on the cost of running the service.
You've just said you will be having a certain amount of officers working. If you
Yes.
just take them at a £20,000 salary, obviously you'll have sick leave and etc. Officers dealing with certain cases that will take longer processing. You will not have enough funding to run this. If you were taking £700 per property upfront, for the next 5 years, you will have no revenue coming to yourselves. So how will you be able to fund this for the next 5 years? There isn't enough money there.
So am I right, Laxmi, that there's funding that's been provided from central government for this?
Yeah, along with
and then alongside that is obviously the revenue that this will generate. So between
we have
the
an exact
two,
figure what money we're getting from the central government, because obviously the figures don't add up. Someone's just, I personally believe someone's just made some figures. This is what we'll charge landlords, and we'll go ahead with it.
I understand your point. What will I've made a note of that, Sajid, and yeah, we'll get back to you with the exact figures. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the exact
because I've looked at the figures and I've looked at the timescale.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit in place. I mean, I've been a landlord for the last 30 years.
Oh, okay.
It's not the selective licensing which will make an effect on the private sector of the landlords that rent out to social housing. The problem we've got is with HMOs, which are unlicensed, which don't need a license, where you're getting drug dealers, junkies, all that type of people. It's what I feel is unfair is the normal person, the tenant who's already struggling to pay rent, is going to be having an added cost. I mean, some landlords are not going to charge £700 over 5 years. They'll probably add £200 onto the rent, and the rents in Birmingham are already increasing, especially on the inner cities where we've got a lot of deprived families living. It's going to be a more burden. I don't think it was given enough time to think about this and put forward to the local communities and the people I've spoken to in the 25 years. Okay, I represent Small Heath, but the 25 wards I've spoken to, every person I've spoken to thinks it's an unfair licensing system and it needs to be looked at. Cllr has been approached. The steering group that was set up with Cllr has fallen apart after 1 year. They couldn't negotiate. And now, obviously, the figures you've come out with, it doesn't justify how you were going to run this in another 2 to 3 years' time.
As I've made a note of the 2 points about the working out of the figures, and the sorry, I've written it somewhere else, and obviously the follow up with Cllr. So we can provide an answer on that. I couldn't possibly give you a breakdown of the figures right now.
I think what we'll do is the slides that we shared earlier, would you share that with participants? And there is an email there. So Sajid, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email, and I'm sure we could discuss.
I mean, I've actually been speaking to, I've been trying to speak to Cllr who's the head of the licensing for selective licensing.
Sure.
Is she the head? Sorry, still.
That's fine, Saqib. What we'll do is leave your email in the chat, and
I'll
we'll get everything sent out to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that.
Abdul, is this your hand from before, or is it a new question that you want to ask?
Yeah, I just want to first thank Emily and Laxmi for a very informative presentation. There's just something I may have missed. You know, the leafleting you were talking about, where's that budget coming from? And has it passed the actual spend control board?
We can't hear you.
My apologies. All spend on the scheme, the property licensing scheme, is from revenue generated, so there's no impact on the council's general fund. And to answer your second question, yes, we have. It's received spend control board authorization.
Okay.
Brilliant. And just to ask, you mentioned about the money being reinvested in the communities and neighbourhood. What's the planning for that that's been put in place?
So as we said, the money has the money generated can only be spent on the delivery of the service. So that'll be through into sort of community intervention, whether it's individual households that are not up to standard or dealing with antisocial behaviour in an area. As we will obviously come back to the group as we progress through the schemes. So whether it's rubbish, antisocial behaviour, poor property standards, whatever those issues might be, it will be dealing with those through obviously the graduated approach to enforcement.
Sure, thanks.
Thank you, Abdul.
From advice to enforcement, you mentioned about that, and you sense there's a bit of maybe a time gap in between. Is it something that could be potentially start enforced more robustly at the present time rather than wait later? I'm a guy more about prevention is better than cure, and a lot of slum landlords have really spoiled our city. And you know, I'd like to see Birmingham City actually be strong, stand up, and start enforcing rather than mollycoddling.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We can't. We have recruited the officers. We are now just waiting for their start dates to come. So yes, I totally accept your point, but as soon as the officers are here and we get them sort of trained up in our processes, we will be out and about and you will start seeing us.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Abdul. Is there anyone else that would like to ask Emily and Lakshmi any questions in relation to this? Abdul, is your hand from before, or is this now another question?
That's from before, lad.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just before we move to the next item agenda, if you guys, Lakshmi and Emily, if you guys want to stay or leave.
Just before we go, we've got some questions in the chat box. I know these have been answered, but I'll just ask them again. So we've got one from Ajmal. How many staff do you have for the specific purpose of selective licensing? I think you have slightly touched on
120 in varying roles.
Okay, and how many properties in total would they be covering, both in Small Heath Ward and across the city?
These are at the moment, they're just estimates because we don't know what we're going to find over the 5 years. We can't possibly know, but this is based on data that we have. We believe in citywide there are 54,000 selective and 8,000 additional, and in Small Heath specifically 1,800 properties, but I don't currently have the breakdown of additional and selective.
Thank you.
But I can get that. I can get the breakdown.
Okay, and someone's asked, would you share emails? So I think the slides that the PowerPoint that we had earlier, could that possibly share, if everyone leaves their emails on this chat,
yeah,
or if you email myself or Saqib, we can get that PowerPoint sent out your way. I believe your emails are on there as well. Any further questions, you can get in touch through those emails.
Yeah, if you'd like to provide those email addresses, Councillor, I'm happy to send those out to you tomorrow, to those people tomorrow. Yeah.
Brilliant
I mean,
answer.
ideally, I think it'd be better if anyone wants these emails, if they could just send you email in the chat. So
Yep,
that
that's
we'll
fine.
just make a note of it, and then we can get
Yeah.
this email out to you tomorrow, hopefully.
Of course, yeah. Anybody who would like a copy, please, do just that. Leave your email in the chat, and I'll make a note to do that tomorrow.
Brilliant. Thank you guys for the presentation. And if you guys want to continue, it's entirely up to you.
Somebody got their
I think
hand
there
up
is
there?
one more question.
Javid.
Yeah, there's questions. Javid Iqbal. Yep.
Well, 1 second.
Yeah, my question is around social housing. Now, I know you guys are looking at the landlords, but who looks after the social housing? How well is it being monitored? Because social housing is cropping up within the residential areas, and the people living in those resident social housing are druggies and all those people. And these people who put them in there, they got social housing, they're not bothered. They just put them in there and just walk away from it. So what's the criteria?
I think you're happy for me to answer that, Laxmi. Yeah, I think you referring to it as social housing, but I think you may mean supported housing.
Supported accommodation.
The supported exempt accommodation. So there is a team within Birmingham City Council that deals specifically with supported accommodation. The team was set up in 2020 to try and bring about some kind of regulation to the sector, although it's very difficult because they are working outside of any legislative framework. But there is as I say, a multidisciplinary team that are tackling that sector, and they do take referrals where there are concerns with specific properties. So if you would like some contact information for that team, I'm happy to provide that to you after the meeting if you want to leave your email address. I do appreciate what you're saying, that often the cohort of tenants within those properties can often be quite problematic, and it certainly is something that's been recognised not only locally but nationally as well, although Birmingham does seem to be the epicentre of the problem. And you may have heard me say earlier that there is a bill that has recently gone through Parliament now, so we are making the right steps in the right direction towards getting that sector regulated, because it desperately does need it. But in the meantime, happy to share with you those contact details if you're referring to a specific property. The team will pick that up and they will send an officer to go and review that property and the landlord. And they, whilst they're working outside of that framework, they do have some good relationships with the providers, and so often, there can be resolutions that can be made.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying is, but is there a criteria, or when they actually apply for this social housing or a landlord's license, does the city have a criteria to inform the residents on the street that this is what's going on? Because they're just cropping up. And people are saying, but if you are going to have these landlords or HMOs or whatever, but there should be residents of that street should be informed, not just a couple of people, a couple of doors, that's it, on both sides of the house. Now, it's not just about the side of the house. Other people want to know what's going on. And this is where HMOs and social, supported accommodation, they're both cropping up, because a lot are going to be honest, because quite a few of our people, what they're doing is, because we've got a major problem with the parking, now they're moving somewhere else, buying houses somewhere else, and they're turning these houses into either HMOs or, you know, renting them, or they're turning them into the social housing.
Okay, so you may have heard of Article 4 within Birmingham, which means that any change of use from a family property into a HMO requires planning permission. Unfortunately, the exempt accommodation are also exempt from that planning regulation, which sadly means that they don't need that planning permission. That is one of the asks, or one of the things within this new bill that is coming out. So it will mean that going forward they will require that planning permission. I know where there are change of use applications for what we would consider additional licensable properties, as in more professional HMOs. Planning are looking quite carefully at the number of HMOs that are already within those roads or those areas. So once that comes in, I think it will only be a positive thing. But I think certainly in the meantime, you would need to direct any concerns around that to the supported housing team. And just to mention about the criteria that you mentioned, I think in regards to that, the criteria for supported accommodation in terms of the tenant would be that they need to have a support need, and that could be anything from, you know, requiring help around addiction to being, you know, a care leaver coming out of foster care. It could be mental health, it could be any of those things. So the criteria is fairly vague, and as long as they've can say that they meet one of those needs, then they can access that accommodation. But I'll provide you with the contact details for that service, and then at least you've got you know, a pathway to making raising concerns.
Yeah, so basically people doesn't mind, but obviously at the end of the day, we don't know what sort of people these are, whether druggies or pedophiles, or, you know, the criminal, what sort of crime they put it. And this is where it should be a license, like you started with the landlord's licensing. It should be a criteria where these people, when they apply for it, they should apply for it. And when they're given a license to do so, the residents of that street should be informed. And this is where we don't know who's living next door to us.
Yeah. So part of this bill that is coming through, hopefully, which will come to fruition within the next, you know, year or two, part of that would be referral pathways. So ensuring that, you know, that they come from reliable sources, as in the tenant, so that they've, you know, the landlord knows the person that they're putting in the property. That it would also be sort of the fit and proper test for the landlord. So there's lots of things that will be built into that and into the licensing conditions that would significantly improve that sector, I think. But, you know, no, that doesn't help you right now, and I do understand the problems.
And I think it would be really for the supported accommodation team to answer on that. It's not our place.
Yeah, but, you know, happy to provide that that information, that contact.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
Just being mindful of the time. Yes, so yeah, thank you for the presentation, Lakshmi and Emily. If you guys want to continue with the meeting, it's okay. If you guys want to leave, it's entirely up to yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So the next item agenda, we've got updates from the police and the local police team. Today we have Mark, he's one of the local sergeants from Bosley Green. I know Mark's just come into the role. I think you've come into Bosley Green for, I think it's been 2 months now, or a month?
Yeah, just around about 3 months I've been in post over at Bosley Green. Prior to that, I was over at Erdington for 5 years as a sergeant. So still learning, so nice to meet everybody that I haven't met already. So yeah, first and foremost, neighbourhood at the moment, we are extremely busy, as I presume everyone that is aware. We've got 4 main things that we are treating as priority and get done regardless of what else is going on in the world. Those 4 things are calls for service. So when someone calls us on 999 101, we're going out to them. The response times on our phones that I know that everybody was struggling with on 101 especially, and the wait times to report have gone down significantly because there's been a large investment in our call handling. The second item that we do without doubt and without fail is around domestic abuse, safeguarding the most vulnerable that need safeguarding, arresting and managing offenders, and safeguarding victims. The other thing that we're doing is we're picking up all the investigations that are the sort of lower level investigations. So your shoplifting, your lower level assaults, your harassment, we are now picking those up. So if you are the Borsley Green side of Small Heath Ward, it's likely that it's going to be one of my officers that are picking up any sort of low level bits. The other massive focus that we've got on both on Borsley Green and across Birmingham is under 25 violence, or under 21 violence, sorry, which is still a massive focus for us in the police. We are trying to be a lot more data driven around our patrols, our locations, the schools that we're visiting, the offence locations. We're doing things like weapon sweeps. We are doing school talks, both in junior and secondary school. We're doing our hotspot patrols. We've got our Guardian Task Force, which is our task force that specialise on under 21 violence, that we regularly have on the Borsley Green area that we request. So they're the 4 things that pretty much every neighbourhood is focusing on. Across the city, us included. Some updates for stuff that I know residents have emailed me to complain about and complained about face to face. I'll start with nitrous oxide and the use of that. Again, that is a nationwide problem that I think is shown by the fact that there's new legislation going through. I believe it might be signed off as soon as the 8th of November from reading the news reports. That's going to help us massively. We are aware of that. We are targeting it. We are doing operations with our partners and looking to explore every opportunity we can to make an impact around there. Hopefully the legislation is going to make it a lot easier for us once that comes into play. But as I say, we are aware of it and we are actively targeting it. Next problem that gets raised a lot: road safety, speeding cars, cars without insurance, cars that are dangerous, cars without MOTs. We've had in the past month 2 operations that are multi-agency road safety operations, where there is us, there's VOSA, there are all the departments that you can think about road safety. We've run 2 of those up by the Borsley Green allotments, up by the McDonald's. They were very successful with numerous cars being seized, but more importantly, drivers being educated around the danger more than anything. What else? Parking. I know parking is a massive issue as well. Around the Small Heath area, more than most sides, to be honest. We are actively removing cars. We're getting residents telling us about abandoned cars. We're working with the DVLA to get those vehicles recovered where we can. Unfortunately, sometimes, although it's abandoned, we have to wait because obviously tax, etc., kind of ties our hands, but we are actively looking at those. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was the new neighbourhood model. So at the moment, neighbourhood as it is at the moment, we are facing lots of, I think the councillors are probably aware, we're being pulled left, right, and centre with our demand. What the new chief's looking to do is effectively ring fence us a little bit more, so that we can be more directed within our communities to put us where our communities want us, which is good news for us. Believe that's starting to be consulted and a plan be formed with the view to that being in place next year. So that's positive. Crime-wise, for the Borsley Green area that I cover, overall crime compared to this time last year to date, we're 4% down on all crime. Serious youth violence is up. Domestic abuse is down. Vehicle crime is down. Burglary is up. And robbery's up. And theft from persons down. So our sort of key performance indicators are very up and down, which is probably quite normal, to be honest. But I'm pleased to say that overall, we are currently on a downward trend. Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has got or any issues anyone wants to raise with myself.
Thank you, Mark, for that. I've just got a question before I go to Mr. Bono.
Yep.
I'd just like to know, how often is the local police, well, your officers in Small Heath, because I actually live in the ward,
Okay.
and I get this told from residents as well that there's very less presence of police. I mean,
Okay.
I've had people come to me in recent days and say that illegal parking you mentioned is a big issue in the ward.
Yeah.
I mean, I've raised it with officers from the Yardley team. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you. I remember arranging a meeting with you, but then I was in hospital and we had to cancel it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what can we do? Because obviously, as elected members, we're getting told by residents that the situation of illegal parking, there's less police presence in Small Heath. I mean, I live in the ward and I can tell you that I very rarely see any police in Small Heath. Well, my patch of Small Heath. I mean, I can tell you from my own personal experience, other than the resident saying this.
Okay. I'd say it's probably twofold. The numbers, as we know, of us have reduced, police. We are out, we are about, we are more data driven. So we are, for example, Guardian patrols, our under 25 violence patrols are all done around data and where things are predicted to happen or have happened previously or where we can make most impact. At the moment, we are out and about. I don't know what road you live on, Councillor. I won't ask you on the open meeting. But we are actively out and about, and if it's not my team, Small Heath, Bordsley, we're constantly bidding for other teams to come in. So we'll have forced traffic. We will have Guardian officers on vans conducting Guardian patrols. I get as many officers and my inspector does. We bid for as many officers as we can to the area.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bono, do you want to ask any question to Mark before we go to the residents?
So questions are coming in through the chat. Mainly it is about parking, the double parking during school time. So if you could look into that.
Yes. I'm aware parking is a massive problem for the residents. The issue that we are facing currently is demand for the police is up, and risk around parking is probably lower than risk around, let's say, the four other items that I talked about under the violence, the domestics, the attending logs, etc. We are doing what we can. We're aware of it. We respond to reports of abandoned cars and vehicles. Yes, ideally, I'm probably with everybody else in this group. I'd love to have a police officer outside every school, ticketing everybody who they possibly could to prevent the dangerous parking that we see outside most schools in Birmingham. Unfortunately, it's a case of I don't have the resources to do that currently. Hopefully, with the new model that's in place, we will have more resources for that. Again, I can't guarantee that. Again, I know that the council have their own parking vans and stuff that they have outside of the schools with the cameras on and all of that sort of side of things.
Okay. Well, this had another question here. How many designated police officers look after Small Heath area?
After Small Heath, so Small Heath is really difficult for me to answer that question. For those that don't know, the Small Heath ward currently is different to the police beat, if you like. So if you can imagine, you've got the Small Heath ward, and then you've got three borders with that. So you've got my Bordesley team, you've got the Yardley team, and the Small Heath team, who all sort of meet at some point on that border. My team has currently got myself and 11 police officers for my team. But as I say, that's my team. There's 3 teams. The reason the other 2 aren't on this call is that we work alternate shifts. So while I'm on late today, one of them will be on earlies and one will be on rest days, so that there is always a cover, which is what I would say would be the bonus of having the 3 of us. The downside is sometimes it makes it a little bit trickier for yourselves to know who to go to because of the border crossing. And I know that you both sometimes get told that's Alan Davis's side, that's my side, etc.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, any residents? I've got one. Abdul, is that from before or is it? Okay, come in, Abdul.
All right, sure. Thank you for that, officer. You mentioned about weapons sweeps. You do that regularly in the parks?
Yes, we do it as often as we can, intel related. So let's say we have intel that there's going to be a school fight or disorder involving weapons. It's quite common for knives, etc., to be hidden within the locations because they don't want to take them into schools. So we don't blindly go and look in bushes around parks. We'll base it on intel.
Base it on intel, okay?
Yeah.
Because there was one particular incident. A chap mentioned online he'd found a machete. Now, obviously, just we've got to check whether it's real or not. Don't there people that report these actually have to have a reference number, or are people claiming wolf?
It's a tricky one, really. So there are such things of weapon surrender bins and that sort of thing. So if you were to phone us and say you found a knife and it was a knife that wasn't believed to be involved in criminality, there's several ways that we could dispose of that knife. So it would all depend on sort of the route that person took to report the knife.
Okay, and
or the machete.
Where are the bins in Small Heath, just for the public to be aware?
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
Where are the knife bins in Small Heath?
It's a great question. Give me 2 seconds and I will be able to tell you. Is there another question while I find that answer out?
Now we're going to go on to NOS after that nitrous issue that we're having in society.
Mark, I might be able to get you out of trouble here.
Thanks, Chris.
So, Councillor Bano, Councillor Khan, Chris Hamilton from the community safety team. I know it's long overdue individual meetings with yourselves. So I work very closely with Mark and his neighbourhood team, as I do with the other neighbourhood teams across the whole east, which is the constituencies of Yardley and Hodge Hill. So I kind of know, in fact, I more than know what the pinch points are, what the pressures are, what the community they're after, what kind of policing plan they're after. We obviously like feed all that into what we call the Logan Community Partnership Plan, which is part of covering the whole east with many partners, possibly on average around about 30 partners I meet with every month from various backgrounds, looking at how we can drive forward certain priorities that Mark's team and his inspector raises as pinch points, raises as community tensions, listening to the ward forums, listening to residents groups and everything else. So it's just to kind of put that into proportion. I'm almost in touch with Mark and his counterparts nearly every day, looking at various community issues that are raising tensions, including parking. Allen Rock being a prime example. And as you know, these issues will not get solved overnight. These are issues going back 30, 40 years in regards to encroachments onto pavements, in regards to parking, because back then, back in 30 years, we had like one car per family, maybe. Now we've got 2 or 3 cars per family, but we've still got the same footprints in regards to parking. We haven't widened the roads. Allen Rock is a prime example. We haven't kind of, as far as I know, we haven't kind of done a red route like Sparkbrook did. And so you can imagine trying to address that now is massive. It's huge. It's huge, because for many, many years, retailers have had it their own way. It's been very comfortable, very amicable. But as communities have grown, as families have grown, as car ownership has grown, obviously there's prime space. And again, I refer back to places like Ladypool Road or Allen Rock Road or Small Heath. And it's just a very difficult long-term situation to resolve. But what I want to add is, I know Councillor Khan and I know Councillor Bano that you've fed into the local community partnership. I know that for a fact, having spoken to lots of councillors, and I'd like to arrange a kind of one-to-one personal meeting with yourselves. Of late, what we've been doing with Mark is looking at some of the issues in Borsley Green around some of the pinch points, some of the roads, some of the cul-de-sacs, some of the licensing, some of the shops, some of the retailers. And it's not an excuse, because I'm quite well aware that you know the current state of the council, the current condition of the council, and the current resources available. But what I can promise you and assure you is that I will do everything in my power to work with partners to find the best solution. That may not be a quick solution, but I can give you absolute assurances. I'm 35 years in the job. I haven't just come into my job. I know how it works, and I know we're in a little bit of a tight spot at the moment, but we will get through it. And going back to what Mark said, they're going through a massive restructure at the moment, a massive change structure, which means we don't have the luxury of having the neighbourhood officers or the neighbourhood teams as we used to. But that will be back in place, according to the Chief Constable. That will be back in place very soon. They're just going through a massive transition at the moment. And so, as I say, I'm very happy, Councillor Bano, Councillor Khan, very happy to meet up with you. Not outside of these forums, of course I am, because I meet up with so many different councillors, and it would benefit me and benefit yourselves, I'm sure, if we did have a one-to-one.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Saqib, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that'd be really good, Chris. If you could drop us an email, copy us in.
Yes,
and,
I definitely will.
We
Definitely will,
could meet up
councillors.
some point next week or the week after.
Yeah, it's long overdue, and I apologise for that. I'm very busy. You're very busy. Elections around the corner. I'm sure you know that. And dynamics change almost on a weekly, monthly basis. And I'm very, very astute to what's going on in a lot of the wards. I cover the 2 constituencies of approximately 20 wards. And as I say, I liaise with 50 partners a month, 50 partners a month easy. So I kind of have my ear to the ground and I know what's going on, and I want to work with the councillors. I want to work with yourselves very closely, as I do with Mark.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we can do that.
Likewise, yes, we'll arrange a meeting and we will get together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just take Sajid Hussain. This guy's hand up for a while. Sajid, you want to come in?
Thank you for that, Chair. I had a walk on Coventry Road, and the main problem was recently there's a report that's just come out. Small Heath and Bordesley Green has got the highest gun and crime rate in the Midlands. But the problem we've had is you've got the top end of Bordesley Green, which comes under Highgate. You've got your Bordesley Green, and then you've got South Yardley. The problem was they weren't sharing the data between the three. Now what they've agreed to do is the inspector has said he will share the data between the three inspectors and work together on the Coventry Road especially and around there, and some of the 24-hour shops, which are bringing a crime into the area. So this was about 3 weeks ago. We had a walk on the Coventry Road, and they've highlighted all the issues. We've covered a lot of problems. It's mainly attracting people from out of the areas coming into the areas, which is causing it. But there was recently an incident on Charles Road where somebody was stabbed, or someone was chasing somebody with a knife. The police somebody rang 999. He was on the call, and half an hour later says, "Is the guy still there with a knife?" And then later on that evening, there was a shooting at that incident. But it seemed to have been that the police weren't coming as that much to Smallheath. There's no police presence. That is the biggest problem we've got in Smallheath and Bordesley Green Ward.
I'll come in to answer that. I'm not sure about that individual incident. I don't want to really comment on that, to be honest. As far as the teams and the area being divided, so when I say that the area is divided into 3 teams and you've got 3 teams covering you have got 3 neighbourhood teams. What the neighbourhood teams do predominantly is the local work within their community. When you call 999, I'd probably say 9.5 times out of 10, you aren't getting a neighbourhood police officer. You are going to get a response police officer. The response teams do have borders, but their borders are nowhere near Smallheath. We're Pan Birmingham wide, so there's no borders or anything like a border that is going to stop us getting to a 999 call where risk is involved. I get the issue around locally managing the borders. Myself, I've got a great relationship with Alan Davis. I speak to him probably 3 times a week in relation to stuff, sharing intel with him. I would argue, admin-wise, it is a nightmare, as in for the councillors knowing who to go to on the board. But from a more police presence, you probably get more police in your area because you cross over at those 3 points and you get more cover, because when I'm on earlies, he's on lates and the other one's on rest days. I'd argue that potentially you see more police than other areas because of that. But I agree, admin side, it is a nightmare. I know that there is talk way above my pay grade of looking at merging the teams to match the council boundaries. Again, that I'm a sergeant, that is way above my head and isn't decided by me, but I know that is being looked at.
Thank you, Mark. I've got Abdul. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, just on what you're saying about the NOS, we'll come on to that. Did you find out about the bins?
I did. We've got 2. You've got one up at McDonald's on Bordesley Green, and you've got one on Golden Hillock Road.
Golden Hillock Road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't there one by Green Lane Mosque as well?
No, that one's gone now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we said moving on to the nitrous oxide issue that you're going to be tackling, you said, what's with the change of legislation. I guess, is there what is it going to be, plans of enforcement, or is it going to be just send out letters to shopkeepers?
It's like any criminal civil investigation, we'll start as low but we'll start low and we'll go high. Yes, there's going to be an education side, isn't there? But ultimately, if it needs enforcement, it needs enforcement.
Brilliant, because I'm sure Sajid Hussain could potentially help. I'm led to believe he owns the Bob Shop on 720 Freehold on Coventry Road. So if he can help, I'm sure
I can give you an update on that.
Can we come in there? We're not having personal attacks, please.
No, this is quite personal now. Abikel's from London. He should not be on here.
Finish.
No, that is
silence. Look,
you'd be able
silence.
Okay.
Can we keep professional? We're not having personal attacks. Thank you.
We've had this
I've just had a personal attack there.
No, we've had this discussion.
And we've stopped it before it went on to an attack. So I have stopped it. So can we please not have personal attacks on here? Thank you.
Thank you, Sajid. So any other questions? Anyone else wanting to ask Mark any questions before we move on to the next item agenda?
There was a question in the chat, which I think you just briefly covered. Someone did ask, is it true that there's talk about merging the local police team? And I think you slightly touched on that.
Yeah, I know there's talks, as I say, above my head around maybe aligning our teams with the council boundaries. But as far as I'm aware, it is just talks and rumour at the moment.
Okay.
I'd like to add to that what Mark said. What you've got some 5 to 8 years ago, what you had was a complete a beautiful plan where you had the police boundaries on top of the youth offending service boundaries, on top of the West Midlands Fire Service boundaries, on top of the council boundaries. For whatever reason, the Boundary Commission decided to upset all of that. And ultimately, we work in very different boundaries at the moment. On the east, as I mentioned earlier, I've got the constituencies of Yardley and Hodge Hill, but they don't always align to the same ward boundaries as Mark alluded to, as the council boundaries or as youth offending service boundaries, who have 5. We ourselves have 6. Mark has many more boundaries. What we try to do, and through the local community safety partnership meetings, the LCSPs, we do capture all those boundaries, and we do have elected members who attend those particular meetings. At the moment, it's limited to 3 councillors. And what we have is hopefully a reflection of what's going on in my case, what's going on in the east. But ultimately, what it's to do is raise the profile of certain wards, certain priority areas, certain pinch points, certain conflicting areas, certain ward boundaries. They all come into this one meeting. And as I say, we have 3 councillors at the present. That was decided by the councillor at the time, John Cotton, that we'd only allow 3 LCSP councillors to come in. But that should be a reflection of what comes in to that bigger partnership meeting. But what I do sit down and do is I liaise with the inspectors, Mark's inspectors. I speak with their chief inspector on a Haroon Chugtai at the moment. He's taken over from Kelly Monaghan, and obviously we've got Jonathan Beach and we've got Astra Jacobs, who are the inspectors on the east. I'm in touch with them constantly, as I am with all the sergeants of each neighbourhood policing team. So we do, as I mentioned earlier, we talk often. What we can't always do is address everything because of resources and redesign. And going back to what Mark said, there is a plan to align all of those boundaries so that one day they will all exactly match each other, which makes absolute sense.
Thank you, Chris. I've got another hand raised. Katam, want to come in, please?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to ask Mark, you're talking about parking, etc. So, I mean, I don't know if you go down the Coventry Road, but the junction of Charles Road, Wordsworth Road and Coventry Road, massive issue with cars park up right to the traffic lights, causing a lot of obstruction. So would that be something you lot would deal with, or would that be the council's responsibility?
in all honesty, probably a joint approach. I'm not aware of that junction myself. I'll take a look and I'll
Sorry,
see
Basman,
what we can do.
Sorry, I missed that because the internet's not really good. What junction did you say?
So you know the junction of Charles Road, Coventry Road, and Wordsworth Road,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, I don't know how you miss it, but there's cars always parked up right up to the junction, right up to the top where the traffic lights are. So if you need to turn left, for example, you can't. You have to go around the cars because they're parked up completely. And you've got cars coming from Wordsworth Road who don't want to actually wait in the queue for the red lights to change, and so they just drive on the wrong side of the road and cut across. I've mentioned this before. So I'd like to know actually whose responsibility that lies with. Is it yourselves, Saqib, or is it the police's responsibility? Because it's a big issue. There are quite a lot of near hit misses on that junction.
Yeah, well, as Marcus said, it's obviously going to be a joint up. I'm in contact with Alan Davis, Sergeant Alan Davis. We are doing some work in that side of the ward. I was supposed to meet Mark, but I was obviously due to I was ill, so couldn't meet him. But there's going to be some work being done about illegal parking because a lot of residents have raised this, and we are going to be doing like a joint operation with the police and the council.
So can I ask, I mean, how long is that when you're likely to see some kind of results?
Definitely. I mean, we're gonna obviously, well, what I'll be doing is trying to have a meeting with Mark in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then we could do something like jointly, me, Shbeen and Mark, and get the council involved, and we can have Chris as well on our side now. So
okay, well, that's good to hear. I mean, it's just because you do find sometimes, even with the buses, like it's really difficult for traffic to get through.
Can I come in there?
Yeah, sure, Mark, carry on.
There's obviously, with parking, there's loads of reasons for it. And there can be equally lots of answers for it. Tickets might be the way. It might be education. It may be road design. It may be making the markings clearer. It may be signs. There's loads that can be done. Without knowing that particular area, I wouldn't want to say how we would look to fix it.
Okay.
I being honest with you, I am waiting back surgery myself. So although I've been on the Borsley Green team for 3 months, I've been inside on the Borsley Green, so I haven't been out to see the problems myself. I'd have to have a proper look at it and come up with a plan moving forward to see where we're at with it before being able to give you a definitive, it will be fixed by this date.
I don't expect obviously like it to happen tomorrow. I understand that this process is involved. What it is that it's an extremely busy junction, and I mean, if I tell you, you ask maybe what reasons they are, I can tell you it's just the fact that people know they can do it. There's no enforcement anywhere whatsoever, whether it's a camera, whether it's just seeing a Bobby on the beat, for example, or whatever it is. There's nothing. They just know they can park right up, walk away, do whatever they need to do, and doesn't matter if you have to go around them, doesn't matter if you have to wait until they come back. And I think that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, and the other thing to bear in mind with that is it's not always the police that give tickets. There are traffic enforcement officers that, believe it or not.
I can tell you, Mark, honestly, I can tell you, I have lived how long in Small Heath, and my God, if you see a traffic enforcement, anybody, it doesn't happen in Small Heath. We don't have any wardens.
I'm gonna disagree with you on that one, because we've just recently, I've had a number of shop owners on Coventry Road that approached me, and we're actually getting regular enforcement officers coming out, and they're actually ticketing people from our patch of Coventry Road. So there is visible enforcement officers coming out now, and I've had some positive feedback from business owners in the last couple of weeks, and I'm monitoring this myself.
Well, that's good to hear, because it's been a long time coming, to be truthful, because one of the reasons that we had previously, and whether you remember this or not, is that apparently traffic wardens were too afraid to come into Small Heath because of the way people behaved, or whatever the reasoning was. That's the excuse that I've been given previously. So the fact that you've got traffic wardens or enforcement officers coming in is a good thing. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just wondering, how long will it last? Will it be a quick spell? Will it be a continuous effort? As a resident, and as a driver, as a parent, etc., how long will this last so people actually realize they can't behave in the way that they do?
I mean, again, that's what Mark said. It's educating people. Ticket is not like, because I work with Sergeant Alan Davis on this, and they've issued loads and loads of tickets, but people just tend to park again. It's educating people, and it's that I personally think just issuing a ticket, it doesn't resolve the issue, because we've had this problem on the other side as well, and it doesn't, so, but hopefully we obviously are looking into this, and hopefully we will push for more enforcement officers and see if we could do like a workshop on this, maybe educate, working with local schools.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, like I said, if we've got enforcement officers going around ticketing people, or at least there's some visibility, then it's a start.
No, we will look into that. Thank you, Basmin. I'm just being mindful of the time because it's half
Yeah,
seven.
sure.
And yeah, I'm just going to let Zulfikar come in because he's had his hand for a while, because Mark's got to go. I think Spina's got some commitment as well. So Zulfikar, I'm just going to let you in. Do you want to come in?
Thank you. I mean, this parking, I wasn't going to say it, but now I'm tempted because so much is discussed. Whether it's junctions or the other apart. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Continue.
The other place is the Munn Street, Coventry Road from city. It's the two lanes. One is turning to the right to Golden Hill, the other is straight. And there are constantly 3 cars parked on the double yellow line and making it difficult for the traffic to move. I mean, the ticketing is not the answer, I think. What city and police need to jointly, either it's a legislation or something else, these cars need to be picked up, taken to the pound, £300 fine, and that's the only way these people are going to learn. Otherwise, you can have any education or the ticketing is just to these people, it is not a deterrent. So once they're taken to the pound, hefty release penalty, and that's the only way they're going to learn. And this is, it's it's difficult for elderly with the scooter, with the ladies with the pram. The other arts part is the junction of Comfrey Road and Mansur Road, where they use the pub. Whole of the footpath is blocked most of the time. And that's every day. And so this need to be some deterrent. I leave it to the police and the local councillor to devise, but my suggestion would be to contract a third party who love to take these cars on their trailers and take them to their pound. And somebody need to teach these people a lesson. I don't know what the real answer is, but something need to be explored different than just ticketing. Thank you.
Thank you, Zulfikar. Just quickly, Sajid, you've got your hand up for a while, and then we're going to have to.
Saqib, I totally agree with you. The last 4 weeks, there has been a high traffic warden presence, booking cars at Coventry Road. But what Uncle Zulfikar said is exactly right. It needs to be, some of these cars are not registered to these people, so they're not bothered about the fines.
No, what we're trying to do is, once obviously Mark's fully back into work, we're going to organize a walkabout. Mishpina and Mark will be, we're going to try to put something in place where we could be at every month with officers, even if it's not Mark, and then obviously take it from there. But I can assure you, enforcement is not going to resolve this, because I've been working with officers and we've issued loads and loads of tickets in Small Heath, and the same people that get issued tickets, they park the second day. So
yeah, I totally agree.
Well, I've got some plans to be working with like schools, All No School and other schools. So hopefully, obviously we'll be looking into that in the coming
I think
weeks.
some of the problems is we could do with like awareness week where the police can come out, council can come out and enforce action for a week. I think that might ease some of the way that people park and just leave the cars on the side of the roads overnight. Do you remember there was an action plan where like Dora Road, St. Giles Road, Mansell Road, the bottom end of Summer Road, when they were parking on the footpaths, they were starting to get tickets, and then all of a sudden, them cars start parking. So I think it's visibility. We don't see much visibility except for them traffic guys that come out. In the last 4 weeks, I've seen high visibility on the Coventry Road only, not the side roads. So I think it's visibility and, presence might do something.
Thank you for that, Saj.
Thank you.
Yes, so is Mark still online?
No, I think it's left. Is it?
Okay, we're just going to move on to the next agenda item. Is 10 minutes of. Oh yes, sorry, Mark popped up. Yeah, thank you for coming, Mark, today. Appreciate that, and hopefully me and Shabina will be in touch with you in the next week or so. So we can meet up and have a little discussion.
Lovely. Thanks for the invite. If there is any further questions, if you want to forward them on to me, I'll respond to them via email.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to shoot from the meeting, unfortunately, because it was meant to finish. I've arranged to pick my child up at 8 o'clock, so I can't stay any later.
That's fine. Thank you. Also, can you just share your email?
I'll just do that. I've got the email. I'll put. Is that okay with you?
Will do that because
I'd rather it come via yourself if that's okay.
Okay.
Just because that's my personal one. So if I was to go off sick, I'd hate for everybody not to get an answer on something because it's gone to me while I'm off sick, etc.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect.
Okay.
If there's any queries for Mark, if you either email myself or Saqib, we will forward them on to Mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Lovely to have you. Okay, the next item agenda is councillors update local issues. So, Shabina, do you want to come in?
Yeah. So local updates. We in this item, I was going to bring in. Well, we did invite Omar Hani from the Neighbourhood Development Plan. He sent his apologies, but he has sent a statement which I'll read out from him. So these are Omar's words. The Small Heath Neighbourhood Plan has continued its extensive consultation events in and around Small Heath, with the most recent event taking place on the 28th of September, taking place at Small Heath Hidden Centre. The community's reaction has been positive and constructive, with recent feedback from residents, including sessions to capture data as to the ideal baseline for Small Heath neighbourhood map and the boundaries soon to help from the focus of neighbourhood plan and activities reach. For those who are unable to attend the event, there is a series of online events which are commencing on the 23rd of October. The website is www.smallheathplan.com. I'm happy to put this on the chat if anyone wants to go on to that. The Small Heath Neighbourhood Plan team would like to thank the kind support of residents, stakeholders and organisations who have contributed to its journey so far. And that's from Omar Hanif, Small Heath Neighbourhood Plan. Now, what I've been doing in the local area as well, I've been in touch with local schools. I've been working with Art Victoria, St Benedict's. So far, it's a little bit with Holy Family as well. I've done a lot of work on empathy and humanity, raising money for victims of the earthquake that happened in Morocco. It just wasn't a journey of just raising money, but it was installing global citizenship in children abroad and working with children, and we've gained a lot of the community together. So that's the work I've been working on so far, Any updates? So we've got Digby Park coming forward as well, which are doing some work. We've got on Saturday, if anyone's free, at the Bio Lounge, they're doing, it's like a little harvest event, which is open to everyone in Small Heath and around Small Heath. In the summer, they had funding where they were growing, and we were part of it was a part of a training program where we were getting children to grow food, grow vegetables, grow food, and they've grown their sort of vegetables. And on Saturday, they'll be bringing what they've grown, and we're looking at what we can make from that. That's happening on Saturday between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock at the Bio Lounge, and everyone's welcome to have a look what the children have been doing over summer and looking at what they can do for next year. So everyone's welcome to that. Do you have any updates, Saqib?
No, I've added what I had to say. We'll take it to the residents. I think Khatam, do you want to come in?
No, I don't have any questions at present.
Okay, thank you. Any other residents wants to raise anything about with both councillors? We're open to questions. Oh, sorry, someone mentioned a question in the chat about illegal dropped curbs. Yes, so I'd just like to give you some update on that. I've been working on this for some time now. I've had loads and loads of emails since I've been elected about illegal dropped curbs. It has been reported to the council. Of any illegal drop, any email that I get with addresses, it does get reported straight away. I've had a meeting with a cabinet member. I've had some discussions with her on highways. There's some sort of policy that they're trying to review, which obviously is in cabinet and it'll be out. And obviously, I've even, I don't know if many residents have seen, I've gave a interview to Birmingham Live as well about this, because I know there's some guys going around just charging people, and without permission, without any planning, they're just dropping curbs, which is illegal, and you could get prosecuted if you have an illegal dropped curb. So I would advise everybody to please go through the right procedures. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take.
Can I just come on that? I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
agree
yeah.
with that. I know we're really struck for time because I have to be somewhere as well for 8 o'clock. But I've had some calls today from residents, and we just have to be really sensible when someone knocks. So the one thing the council will not do is get officers to knock your door and say, we're out here to fix your drive, or you put a request in for a drive. Would you like a drive? The council does not knock anyone's door to do that. Residents have said the door was knocked. They said, we know you're interested in a drive. They took cash payments from us. We have to be sensible when we make a decision, because it's your property and everything that we do has to be legal. Now, one thing council officers, like I said, will not knock doors and they will not take cash payments. Money will also be transferred into a legitimate account where it can be traced. Unfortunately, if these properties do come up, they will be questioned, and the cost potential will be back on the homeowner to undoing that drive and putting the pavement back to what it was. So when we say education, how does it work? It's these little steps that we have to take to really consider. If someone's knocked your door, said, I'm from the council, question that. Email one of the councillors, you've got our numbers, ring us. Are people not? I can assure you the council is not going around knocking the door and say, let's get your drive made. And it's definitely not for £1,200. So we just have to be really aware of how we're actually engaging with people that knock the door and departing from our money, because potentially the house owner is in trouble and this individual has gone off with your money. Thank you.
Shabina. Can I just have Javed quickly come in?
Yeah, just a quick one. Basically, I understand what you're saying, but I have seen basically these trucks which has got highways on them. I mean, Saqib, I was talking to you yesterday. The trucks got highways on them. So basically, a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, they're part of the council. But people doesn't realise that they're not part of the council. So
No,
these people who are doing...
Sorry, Javed, can I just come
work
in?
on the roads, and that's what they're doing.
No, but Javed, we had this discussion yesterday as well. If a truck says highways on there, it does not mean that it's from the council. Anyone that works on the streets, roads, he could have a truck and put a highway sticker on his truck. So, as Shabina said, the council is definitely not coming, knocking doors, asking people to drop their curb. And I would advise people, obviously, follow the right procedure. Thank you. Yeah, so quickly, we'll just get Sajid. Sajid, you want to come in?
Okay, just on that footpaths, the drop curbs, it's also been said that obviously something else they've looked at is that the police can actually get involved in it if the council give them the go-ahead, because it's council property they're ripping up.
Yeah, this is...
So that could be under criminal charges, because obviously that's Birmingham City Council property. They're digging that up. So what if there is a department that can actually deal with it, as soon as someone complains, reports it, they can get the truck driver. It's the truck drivers that are coming and ripping these footpaths up, and then it's obviously costing us taxpayers to put it right.
Sorry, can I just come in there? Sorry, had my hat for a while. Yes, I mean, I reported drop curves to the council. I was told the fact that don't worry, someone will be in very shortly, and this is the time where the work was actually being done. Now, again, this continued for a couple of days. Council saying, "Oh yeah, definitely, you know, we'll come down. Yep, Shamam should be there very, very shortly." Unfortunately, this didn't materialise. Now, what's happened since the conversation with the council is that more and more people are having it done, because these road creators are actually knocking on people's doors, getting it done. Now, obviously, this has been an issue that's been going for a number of years. Obviously, before the two councillors we have for Small Heath, it was way before their time, and we was told by the previous councillors the fact that, oh, don't worry, you know, they'll have to get it undone, and the homeowner who's actually done that will be liable for any costs. Now that looks like hasn't happened. Also, a point to know is the fact that when these cowboys are actually doing these so-called drop curbs, it's absolutely dangerous. The reason I say that is because it's a slip hazard, it's a health hazard there, and unfortunately, it looks like the council are turning a blind eye, or at least it seems so.
Okay. Thank you for that. No, I can assure you, I mean, since I've been in the post, I've had a lot of emails. I'm not gonna, I mean, you know, I've had a lot of emails about illegal drop curbs, and I can assure you that I am working on this, and I've had a lot of discussions with enforcement officers and the cabinet member for highways. So there is some sort of policy review being done, and hopefully, I mean, I understand it's frustrating for residents because it is taking a while, but there will be action taken once obviously we are on the clear side. And I mean, I advise everyone. I've had people approach me and say, look, we want to dropped curb, and I've told them the right procedure. And when they've gone to the council, and the council have come back and said, look, your driveway size is not sufficient enough, and they've come back to me and said, look, oh, there's this guys of, and I've always advised them, look, I mean, it could take 6 months to a year. You will be prosecuted. When the council get on this, you will be told to put that back the way it was. Hello?
Yeah, yes. I think the key here is obviously keeping, making sure the council is obviously, keeping on their, I didn't want to say I'm looking for, just making sure that obviously we kind of go back to council frequently and say, you know, what's going on, because I think there's a tendency now to obviously, just mention this to council and forget about it. So again, I think we need to be on the case at a frequent intervals.
Oh, definitely. I mean, again, my number, my email address is on the council website. Shabina's number, you can call us, email us, and we'll be happy to help. I mean, you know, if there's any new ones that have popped up, you can send myself or Shabina an email, call us, and we will report it.
Thank you. I think we need to wrap up. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go. I have to pick my son up from boxing. So are you happy to wrap up, Saqib Khan?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to quickly just say something before we wrap up?
I won't get caught out by the mute button, Saqib. Just saying that a lot of the issues that are very close and very dear and very important to a lot of residents aren't ignored. They certainly aren't. And speaking with elected members, a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. Not every one of the different departments are representative within this group tonight. And I mean, a lot of what Saqib says is a lot to do with highways, a lot to do with planning sometimes, a lot to do with what they call the East Birmingham Inclusive Growth Strategy, which is about a vision statement as to how Small Heath Borders Green will look in 10 years' time. So what I'd like to wrap up with is just to say a lot of work goes on behind the scenes. And I'm not just saying that, it does. I know for a fact it goes on behind the scenes. We have conversations constantly. A lot of it falls down to resources. If you imagine trying to empower traffic wardens along the Coventry Road and also along Allen Rock Road and also along Ladypool Road, but equally going the whole of Pan Birmingham, there's never enough trading standard officers, there's never enough highway officers, there's never enough housing officers, there's never enough parking enforcement officers. That's just where we are at the moment. There has never been that many, but in the current climate, we are, every one of these resources are quite valuable, and we will try our very best to identify all those real demand areas. But just bearing in mind that, and I mean this with the greatest respect, Small Heath and Borders Green are just 2 wards of 69 wards.
Definitely. That's fine. Thank you for that, Chris. And Shabina, do you want to quickly add anything, or shall I?
No, thank you very much. So thank you to everyone for attending. If you would like the PowerPoints and you would like Mark Robinson's email contact Saqib Khan or myself, and we will send all that over to you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
attending
you,
the
Liz.
meeting, and the next item agenda will be sent out in due course. Thank you. I will now close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
guys.
Thank
Beverly,
you.
can you just stay online for a minute, please?